Check 1, 2.
You ready?
I'm ready for this.
Woo! Let's do it. Hello, Spokane, and welcome to
another episode of EvoReal Talks here on KSBN Radio.
Coming to you from our home studio. We call it Studio L.
Studio L.
Studio L for... Oh, it's not living room.
It's not living room.
Studio D
for the dining room.
That's right. Here we are.
What are we talking about today, Jess?
Well, we are going to talk about more economic stuff.
Ooh, fun.
I know. I think the thing is it sounds...
Numbers.
We try not to get too dry on this, but we're realizing it's just there's so many things happening nationally that we have to try and...
talk about housing and not talk about the economy
this point. It's true.
I mean, last year, everything was cool and nobody was talking about the economy other than, it's amazing.
Yeah. And things are changing rapidly,
so
and we're trying to keep up on that.
Or some economics.
Yes, and then we're also going to be talking about short-term rentals. So these, specifically, we're going to be talking about Airbnb, nationally, locally. We're going to talk about some of that stuff. We're going to do our numbers. And hopefully at the end, we'll have a little bit of time to talk about your favorite subject, gardening. What were you? I don't know what he was going to say.
I don't know what I was going to say either, but I self-edited. So
okay, that's good. No, he really does love to garden.
I do love gardening.
And I appreciate that he gardens because then I get to cook with that fresh produce.
I've been having salad almost every day for lunch because I have so much lettuce right now. It's insane.
Yeah.
We should post a picture on Facebook.
We should post a picture. We will do that. We will post a picture. All right, Matt, so let's get into economics first. Can you tell us what's going on right now in the nation?
What is going on for economic perspective? Well, let's just talk a little bit. The National Association of Home Builders, NAHB for short.
Okay.
They do a market index report, and basically what that is they ask their members of the National Association of Home Builders to rate the market conditions for sale of new homes at the present time and into the next month. So this is like, how do the Home Builders Association, how are they feeling about the market? So that index rose in May. And that's an important thing to note that, and it doesn't surprise actually with things starting to loosen and open up that the Association of Home Builders would feel more positive.
Sure.
Moving into the future, it's really important to watch the housing industry, not just because it's what we do every day, but for the greater economy because it has a multiplier effect on the economy. And this is because when you build or you buy a house, you also buy from other businesses.
Sure.
Landscapers, furniture, carpet,
electricians.
It's so critical.
Appliances.
It's why people watch the housing market so closely.
Sure.
Is because it is an indicator as to what the rest of the economy is going to do. So that was really important. Now let's talk about housing starts and building permits. Now, why is this important?
I love this. Housing starts. That's always been one of those phrases that I think is hilarious. It just means
somebody started building.
Build a build. Yeah, build a build.
And building permits are prior, right? So these are all indicators.
Right.
So building permits people watch because you pull a building permit before you start a house.
Sure.
So it's an indicator as to what's coming down the pipe.
Yep.
And then housing starts are like, these are properties that are being built and will be available for people to move into or be on the market in the next 6 to 9 months.
Right.
All right, so Census Bureau reported that housing starts fell in April 30.2%. This was following a decline of 18.6% in March.
Sure.
So that's a crap load of housing starts that didn't happen.
So I know you're probably going to talk about this, but it will be interesting to see as more and more people, like in our state, in Washington State, we're calling it phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. And so it'll be interesting to see if those numbers bounce back really quickly.
Yeah, it actually will be a really important number. So building permits, so that was housing starts.
Okay.
Building permits fell 20.8% in April and following a decline of 5.7% in March, which makes sense too because things didn't get shut down until the middle part of March for most of the country or late part of March. So you have all of these permits that were pulled in March that didn't get to start now until May potentially. So obviously, as you said, now that the real estate industry is reopened or reopening, it's going to be really important to see how housing progresses. Just kind of paying attention to that. The one thing that is, I think, will be interesting is to watch existing home numbers. Will we see a massive headwind of existing homes coming on the market because people have been unwilling to put their house on the market for fear of touring and those type of things?
Sure.
These are national numbers that we're looking at.
Right.
And so that's some stats there. Let's talk a little bit about job losses. So last week the report came out. So this would have been 2 weeks ago's numbers because it always lags by a week. 2.9, almost 3 million people filed for their initial jobless claims 2 weeks ago. Last week's numbers, that came out just as we're recording this today on Thursday, 2.4 million. And we're seeing a trend down. If you go 3 weeks back, it's 3.1, 2.9, 2.4. So that's a good trend of fewer people that are filing. Now let's talk about continuing claims. So those are people that have remained unemployed and continue to seek benefits. Rose from 22.3 million 3 weeks ago to 22.8 million 2 weeks ago. And there's always a 2 week lag on that. So it went up for those that are continuing to search. And this is really the point of this. Everybody's really big question right now is what is it's great. People are unemployed because everything is shut down.
Right.
How is this going to change in the next few weeks?
Right, as things open up.
Because we're at the end of May now.
Right.
Much of the country started to open up a couple of weeks ago. And so those numbers are not necessarily indicative of a huge jump back into business.
Yeah.
The next thing as far as economic report is fiscal aid. So last Friday, the 15th, the House released, not its proposed, but it passed legislation for a $3 trillion financial aid package. This is in addition to everything else that they've done.
Right.
Now, we all know, and this was spoken before it even passed on Friday, that President Trump and the Senate said that they will not pass it. So it was dead in the water. But the important thing is that there's a negotiation process that has begun.
Right.
Unfortunately, as each day goes by, small business owners are put under continued financial stress with businesses being closed. And with political process, it probably won't be until June until something is passed. Which leads me then to kind of the final thoughts that I have on economics, which came from this week's Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. So they had a hearing this week that was televised, or not televised, I watched it on Twitter, but
You were Twitter-pated?
it was online.
You were Twitter-pated with the economy?
I was definitely Twitter-pated with that part of the economy. So they were it was a hearing with the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell and the Treasury Secretary Mnuchin. I don't really care for his name, honestly. It's really difficult for me to look at, and I shouldn't look at it.
Just Mnuchin.
Anyway, so this committee hearing, they're interviewing these guys and questioning them from all sorts of different angles. And really, I'm sure it was the committee that was really trying to form its opinions on what their position, because this is the Senate again, on how they might advise the Senate on looking at the House bill. Because you've got kind of these two camps. You've got a camp that says get some money into people's pockets so that they can spend it, they can pay their employees, they can pay their rent.
Right.
And then you have this other party, this other camp that's saying, well, the economy just needs to get going again. We just need businesses to happen. And the challenge is that when you start to look at the data, even when people put the open sign up, the number of people that are walking into the restaurant is a fraction of what was happening before.
Right. So even if they can open, doesn't mean they're going to make money. Doesn't mean they're going to make enough money to stay afloat.
So there's the tension and the argument between the two camps. The really big concern that was being discussed in this hearing was small businesses that are going to begin to, if they haven't already experienced it, serious issues of liquidity. So let's just talk about liquidity. I don't want to use words that are hard for people to wrap their head around. Are you liquid? You've heard that phrase before, even at least in the movies, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So liquid being I've got cash to pay my bills. Well, a lot of businesses don't have the cash because their cash is tied up in inventory, their cash is tied up in the real estate, their cash is tied up in something, and if they're not selling stuff, then they're not liquid.
Right.
Well, liquidity...
They can't just take money out of their savings account and deal with whatever situation they've got.
They probably can't get a loan because people are like, I'm not sure you're going to be in business. So that's where the liquidity issue is, and that's the argument on the side of let's give some money to people, right? Payroll protection plan and the different SBA products. That was part of the purpose there. The bigger concern, so liquidity is going to have issue paying bills, rent, mortgages, employees, those kind of things. The bigger issue is that they tossed out a statistic that a very large percentage of small businesses cannot they only have 1 or 2 months worth of reserve until they're unable to pay their bills, which quickly puts them in a position of insolvency. And insolvency is where not only can't I pay my bills now, but I can never pay my bills in the future,
Right.
which means now bankruptcies are going to start happening and foreclosures potentially start happening. And a significant portion of small business owners start their business with a home equity line of credit on their house.
Oh, boy.
And so these are the fears that people are having conversations around, and it becomes this domino effect.
Yeah.
If things go that direction, it becomes the domino effect. So on a lighter side, I think it's important. These are really high-level national conversations, and we can't ignore them.
No.
We can't ignore them because even in our smaller market, we're impacted by the national side of things. But on the brighter note, the National Association of Realtors shared last week at their mid-year conference, which was held remotely, of course, that Boise, Idaho is projected to be the #1 market in the nation to recover. Spokane, Washington is #2.
That's amazing.
So, and I will say that we haven't necessarily felt the downturn like a lot of markets potentially have. And in listening to some of the big executives like the Redfin CEO who tracks massive online data, I'll be interested to see what Realtor.com has to say, is people in big cities are saying, cost of living here is super high, and I've been working at home for the last 2 months. Where can I live for half the price and still have my high-paying job from Seattle or New York City? Or, wow, Spokane, Washington, they had 400 cases? We had 400 people dying an hour for a while.
Well, actually, this is interesting because I did see a headline. I have to admit, I did not go to the headline, but it was something about Facebook basically saying, fine, you can move because I know you want to do stuff virtually, but we're not going to pay you as much if you move to a different area.
And that will be a really interesting thing because up until this point, many employees that I've known that have moved from bigger markets have been able to negotiate the same salary because they're doing the same work. And when employers catch an opportunity for themselves, because here's the thing, those employers are on the hook for 10, 15, 20-year leases that if all of their employees don't come into the office, awesome, they don't need the space, but they're on the hook for the space.
That's correct.
They're going to have to figure out ways to...
Here's the reality, and this just keeps going through my head as I hear even the big CEO for big real estate companies go, yeah, I understand my people want to work from home, and I'm totally cool with that. However, I still have to pay my lease, and then when I'm talking to the person who I'm leasing it from, that property manager is also feeling the pain because as the different tenants feel the pain, then they feel the pain. And it is what Simba would call or Mufasa would call the circle of life. We are all connected.
Yeah.
Everything is connected. Business starts, housing starts, right? You got to have the appliances. You have to have the electrician, the plumber, all these different, which some of those are mom and pop shops, that do that work. And it's just it's fascinating. And we have to understand that we do all need each other in this economy that we have. It's all interconnected.
And I spared you all from the numbers as it pertains to the global economy.
Thank you. No, but
but the reality is it's interconnected around the world, right?
Yeah.
And so supply chains and people that are exporting right now, any business that's exporting has seen a decrease in what they're making for exports. So.
It's a fascinating time that we live in, and it can be scary, but I think that my hope is that, how I think of it is like, I have my family, I got my husband, I got my kids, my extended family, my mom, those people are safe, and, whatever happens, worst case scenario, we all live in a commune together. We'll just put tents in our backyard and let everybody live here.
And
kids will sleep outside. Adults will get the beds.
Such a Pollyanna view of the whole thing.
Well, you gotta have something.
The reality is that we're so insulated from some sections of society that are feeling massive crush.
Yes.
I listened to a podcast earlier in the week interviewing a mom and pop in New Orleans that owned a restaurant that opened their doors when New Orleans allowed for it, and like 5 people came in over the weekend.
Right.
And she was the one that was sharing, we took out a loan on our house to start this business, and if we can't make that, we lose our home. So there are people.
It's a domino.
It's
a domino.
Not everybody gets to have the opportunity to do the commune. You know,
yeah, I know.
And I know you're teasing, but
yeah,
there's a tension right now
all around the country for sure. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Airbnbs, not only nationally, but locally.
Short-term rental markets, because it could be Airbnb, but it might be other
I'm specifically
things.
going to talk about Airbnb. I mean, we're going to talk about the other stuff too, but we're going to be talking about that company in particular.
Well, I'm excited to learn about Airbnb.
That's good.
Before we jump into our Airbnb stuff that you're going to
Yes.
talk about, let's talk about a featured home for this week, which I think will fit really well into the Airbnb. 41101 Sunday Bay Road in Deer Meadows, Washington. This is on Lake Roosevelt. This is, first of all, you should just come to our Facebook page to check out the pictures, because this is beautiful with over 180-degree views of
in the kitchen.
river valley. This is listed by one of the brokers in the Realty One Group office. It is listed for $450,000. It's a 2-bed, 3-bath, but there is ability to put a 3rd bedroom in the basement, which, by the way, because of the way it's built, is daylight right out, looking out over the river. Amazing views. I think that it obviously would be a great vacation home or retirement home or something like that, like a place you can retire
second home.
to.
Well, your uncle lives, so he's from Odessa. But
he has a second home.
But then he bought the second home, and he practically lives there now because he just loves it so much.
Yeah.
Like, we have family reunions there, and what a view. So, it's not an exact location, but, Lake Roosevelt, kind of big.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. If you want to see photos of the property, visit our Facebook page. Obviously, if you're interested in taking a look or walking through that appointment or that property, we'd be willing to set an appointment. You can find us at EvoReal, EvoReal, on all the social media channels, or at EvoReal.com. You can contact us at 509-62-HOUSE. We'd be happy to show it to you.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about Airbnb. Airbnb has been hit really hard by this whole thing. Can you believe it?
Surprise.
Now, I did see that short-term rentals in some states were considered non-essential. I don't know if that was the case here in Washington
Non-essential or essential?
Non-essential.
It would make sense that most of them would be non-essential, don't you think?
No, I mean, I think if people are stuck in so they're staying in a hotel and now they're stuck in that area because they can't leave, or someone gets sick or something like that, it'd be nice to have a short-term rental. So anyway, I don't know if that was the case in Washington State. I wasn't paying attention to short-term rental. Certainly rentals, we couldn't.
Yeah, rentals, you weren't able to show property and stuff. So I guess it would just be how you fit into the rules, right? Because a lot of Airbnbs, you're not showing the property people. You're doing everything on the internet and giving them the code to get in.
Right.
So
here's the interesting thing about Airbnb. Airbnb in 2017 was worth $31 billion. At the end of April, they were worth $18 billion, which... that still seems like a lot of money, but when you look at it from a big picture, they lost a lot of money. Now, here's some. So we're going to talk about it on a national level, and then we're going to talk about it on a state level, and then we're going to talk about it on a Spokane level. Okay.
Okay.
So nationally, they over the past very short period of time have raised over $1 billion in investment capital from some really big names in finance. Fidelity, TR Price, a bunch of others. I want to say there's like 3 or 4, which shows that at least those companies believe that's a vote of confidence, right? To say, okay, this is a short-term situation and they're going to bounce back. They're definitely a place to put your money, which I think is fascinating. They laid off though after this, so that infusion of cash didn't stop the bleeding, because They laid off 25% of their workforce, which is 1,900 people. They cut their executive salaries by 50%. And the CEO has said that he will not take a salary for 6 months. So they are definitely trying to keep as much cash as they possibly can.
The reality is I'm sure that they anticipate the ability to come back after all of this, but they have to weather the storm.
Right. So they were going to go public this year. So they were going to, they said that they waited. So last year they could have gone public, but they were like, we're going to do it in 2020. Apparently not a great idea. So let me just give you a little bit of history about Airbnb. In 2007, two roommates, Joe and Brian, were having trouble with their rent. And so they decided that they should rent out 3 air mattresses. So they rented out these 3 air mattresses to 3 different people, 2 guys, 1 gal, and they served them each breakfast the next morning. And this was in San Francisco when I guess the hotel market was really tight and people needed a place to stay for various conferences and things like that happen in San Francisco. So that's how it started. And then they started their website, and it was literally air, bed, and breakfast. So all those times we stayed in an Airbnb, we should have been getting breakfast the whole time. But I don't remember ever once getting breakfast from anybody. So the word air comes from
the air mattress?
The air mattress, which I did not put that together. In 2009, something really interesting happened related to the business. So they brought another partner in, they were doing some work. And this is interesting because it relates to our business in a big way as well. So they were trying to be profitable. They were making consistently $200 a week is how much they were making. It was not enough for them. They had a bunch of houses listed on their website, but it wasn't moving. They realized that their listings had poor quality pictures. So they just beat the street, went out door to door to each of their listings and took the pictures themselves and retook the pictures. And within 1 week, they had doubled their profitability.
Wow.
So, of course, that was still only $400 a week. But still, it made a huge difference. They had a light bulb went on for them in that if you're gonna do something over the internet, it better look good. And the moral of the story here for our business is if you have a great house and you have crummy pictures, it doesn't matter that you have a great house because people look at it as crummy. So
it's the internet economy. People are looking at the property online and they will not walk. They won't even drive by if pictures are garbage.
So that's just a little something. So we're going to now talk about it on a state level. And Matt, I want you to talk about this because you called one of our friends that has some Airbnbs.
Yeah,
and I'd like to find out kind of how this has affected them.
Yeah, it was really insightful. So in talking to him, he said in March, in recent history, they would be at about 98% occupancy, so only 2% vacancy, which is pretty remarkable. And in March and April, they went down to 45%, I think, in March, 48% in April, so mid-40s,
That's still pretty 40s.
Good. That's still pretty good, but comparatively speaking, a significant drop.
Right.
He did say that May is coming back strong. But he had an interesting insight, and not being someone that's been too involved in short-term rentals, is, in his opinion, there's 2 groups of short-term rentals. There's the short-term rentals that are vacation properties, and then there's what he and his wife do, which is they compete with local hotels for people that are there for business conferences or visiting family, and they're just having it. They want an alternative to a hotel room,
right?
And so. In his opinion, that's going to come back more quickly than the vacation stuff because the people that have to go to Tacoma for some reason are going to have to go to Tacoma.
Yeah, for sure. So now let's get a little bit more hyper local about Spokane. I reached out to somebody that I know that also does Airbnbs, and they said on March 18th, the cancellations just started rolling in, and everything was canceled for March and April, everything. And then they started to, just trickling in, they started to get more longer term reservations, which is what we were talking about, right? Not people coming for a vacation, but people maybe needing to be here for a reason, and they felt like maybe it was safer than a hotel.
Sure.
And so now it's going to be more long term. When I say
it's interesting that people would think it's safer than a hotel, but I guess it's like one group of people was in that house that
right.
you could
and
wipe places down
in
if
a
you
way
wanted
it's
to.
contactless, right?
Sure.
You don't have to meet. You go, you get a thing out of a box. You don't have to interact with people. It's interesting because, so just generally speaking, when they do those longer term leases, it's not as profitable. So if you bought your Airbnb to just be that, an Airbnb, and you were counting on that cash flow that you get for short term, and now you're having to do longer, like 3-month term, you could be in trouble because you might not have put enough cushion into that if you were counting on the 3-day, the 4-day, because you make more money on that. So cancellations, hotels versus Airbnb. Hotels still blow Airbnb out of the water because, within 24 hours, you can call any of your hotels and cancel and say, sorry, I can't do it anymore. And you don't have a penalty. Where with Airbnb, they let the hosts decide what their cancellation policy, and some of them are really strict and some of them are really loose. And so that's been a really interesting thing. So are we going to see it come back? That is what we don't know. And hotels are definitely vying for that business. Some of the stuff that Airbnbs maybe can't do quite as well as a hotel. I mean, hotels are have these guns now that they spray in the room to disinfect the air, and I mean it's kind of fascinating the lengths that they're going to try and figure this whole thing out. It
will be interesting, as with all of this that's going on, to see how it kind of susses out at the end.
Yeah,
I could see there being vacation properties starting to, again, especially if it was I can afford this vacation property because I can rent it out when I'm not there. And now all of a sudden there's been 2 months where I didn't get it rented out,
right.
Or all of my summer vacations are canceling, or half of them are not.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see what happens with that. So
yeah, so that'll be
so if you're interested in
watch.
getting into that market, could be a good opportunity at this point to pay attention to what's going to happen there.
Absolutely. And I'll be interested to know how we feel when we start to travel. Are we going to be more comfortable in hotels because of cancellation policies, and maybe we feel like they're going to do a better job with disinfecting, because the Marriotts of the world now are going to set super strict policies, and yet a mom and pop may not be able to do that. So
it's really interesting.
We will continue to watch and see what happens with that. And Matt,
we should kind of wrap up here with some numbers.
Yeah,
and
let's
maybe
do it.
Talk a little bit about gardening. So let's talk about Spokane numbers. Active listings, 1,036. That's down a little bit. Last week it was 1,156. So 150 or so. Not quite 150, 120 if I'm doing my math. Pending listings, 1,455. Last week it was 1,506. Also down. Sold in the last 7 days, 113. That's staying pretty steady. Sold in the last 30 days, 587. Last week it was 616, so again, it's down. Monthly inventory, 1.28 months of inventory. Last week, 1.3, so that's gone down. Median sold price for 7 days, 294. Last week it was 305. 30-day median, 291. The week prior, 280. So, I mean, everything's staying pretty stable. The thing we just have to remember here is that we're at the end of May.
Yeah. We should
be
shooting
just
up.
Blowing up right now.
And
so it's very delayed. I think there's just a lot of question marks on people's minds. And
we were going to talk about what's happening this week, and really it's phase 2. We're getting close to. We're taping this on Thursday. It will be aired on Saturday.
So now phase 2 could be implemented. There could be delays. We don't know, but it's coming quickly.
Yeah.
And so with that, we should probably wrap things up.
Yeah.
I guess we'll have to talk about gardens next week.
Next week, guys.
So thank you for joining us today. Don't forget, you can find us at EvoReal.com. We enjoy spending some time with you on Saturday. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.